Hey, what's up, guys? It's Justin with JDC Products, and today we're going to talk about something that I think is pretty significant, pretty interesting, that I've just recently stumbled upon. And before I try to take it any further than what I want to take it to, I want to go ahead and put the information out there. I think it should be out there, and it's not, and that saddens me to a bit, but we'll get into that. But I got into this research maybe 4 years ago, and I mainly got into it just to learn about and develop and build a hydrogen heater. And that was for my own personal use, really. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and it has been thus far. There's just not a time limit on that, because it's taken a lot longer than I had thought. I wanted to get this stuff a lot further than I had thought I would have got it, and learned a lot more than what I've learned thus far. But on the positive side of things, I've learned a ton of information, a lot more than I knew when I first got into it. I've met some really unique, really interesting, really intelligent individuals. Some of them I consider my friends and even as close as family. And I'm grateful that I started this, going down this road, a few years ago. I'm grateful that it's been able to keep up and sustain itself. And I've run into some hardships, mostly financial, and I still run into those today. But somehow I've managed to keep all this stuff going, and keep my interest peaked. There's been times where I've got really down and out about this technology because it hasn't, not only progressed further by me, but by everybody else. I've got down and out about it, and something always seems to just captivate me and grab my attention again, and I become interested, and in some cases obsessed with it again. And I'm grateful I've kept this stuff going. I got this website going that you can purchase products off of me, that I've developed so far. And I did that just to fund the research further, and hope to someday be able to do this full time and fund this everything full time. But sometimes if I wanted, I don't know. I've learned what money is and what money is the root of, and I don't really strive to make tons of money. I'd like to make a money to provide for my family and to keep this research going. But any good entrepreneur that's making a lot of money and kind of have to I don't think they always have good ethics. They have to kind of bend the truth and sometimes dilute the sugarcoat things and deceive and to make more money, and that's not always been my main priority with this research. I wanted to teach, I wanted to learn, and I wanted to help people along the way as well. And I do want to profit off of that, but I don't want to make it a point where I'm ripping people off, and really just deceiving people purposely. It's one thing to deceive somebody because you don't know yourself, and I'm guilty of that as well. Just because I don't know, and I tell you some wrong information, it's not that I meant to do that. It's just I didn't know really myself. But there's some, especially in any industry, but in the HHO industry, there's a lot of companies that will try to deceive people that are, interested in technology and just want to buy something off the shelf, don't want to have to build it themselves and make it work, and they're getting all this false information from these people to try to sell product. And I try not to be that way, but again, I'm in this, and then I'm in this for humanity. I want to inspire somebody to take a path that's going to lead them to something that's really great in this, because we need it. We need these technologies out, and it's sad to me that this stuff is hundreds of years old, especially this this hydrogen research. And yet, my grandparents, my parents, well, even my grandparents' parents, my grandparents, my parents, and even myself, we never used this technology at all. They don't even know about it. It's like, if it's so old, why hasn't it ever been built for just the normal people to use? Even if it's inefficient, that doesn't give you any reason to stop development of it. You try to bring those inefficiencies up and to try to fix those inefficiencies and make it useful. You continuously develop that stuff, and it hasn't been, at least out in the mainstream. Now, through a lot of my research over the years, I found out it has been done, it has been researched, and it has been developed. And a lot of these inefficiencies, so-called inefficiencies, have been fixed and solved, but the stuff is being suppressed and locked away in black budget projects. And I get into some of the occult or hidden things that go on. Call me a conspiracy theorist, I guess, if you want, but there's a lot of truth in those conspiracies. And you start to get to the bottom of it when you can use a tool like the internet. I still think that the internet is being, what's the word? Number one, it's being monitored. We all know that. But it's being swept in a way of certain tidbits of information. They're also laying in bits of misdirection information. Putting information out to make you look in one direction when you should be looking in another. I think that's being done in the HHO community, if you want me to be honest, now that I've been looking at this for a while now. But it's just, there's so much stuff I want to say with this video. I don't want to make it too long, but I guess it's my video. I can say whatever I want to say. I'm probably not even going to talk about the projects that I'm getting involved in and the information, the important information as it relates to the HHO newly found information, for probably towards the end of the video. I just got a lot of things I need to get off my chest and say before I even get to this. But I couldn't find none of this stuff on the shelf. I couldn't go to any store around here and buy any of it. Nobody around here even knew about it. And so you jump online, you jump on YouTube, you see what these people are doing. Pretty amazing stuff, I'd have to say. There's some very intelligent individuals on YouTube doing experiments. But still didn't answer my questions. All I wanted to do was produce, purify, store, and use the gas. I wanted to see some of these on-demand projects, such as heating, as well. But when you go on YouTube and look around, all you're going to find is pretty much miles per gallon boosting kits, little HHO torches. That's about it. For the most part, I think even as the YouTube came about, the HHO or hydrogen research within the community, the garage engineers, garage inventors, it was pushed for miles per gallon injection, or miles per gallon boosting, experimentation, injection, whatever you want to call it. It was pushed to be installed on automobiles. And there's information. It does work to a certain extent. But I honestly feel like that the automobile companies basically have developed their the internal combustion engine is not built and doesn't recognize HHO as an additive gas. And so because of that, most people will get no results, or they're going to get negative results when they try to install one of these electrolysis cells on their vehicle. Several different reasons for that. HHO injection is pretty complex when it comes right down to it. HHO in itself, the gas is pretty complex when it comes right down to it, but you know, in order to make it really work, and I'm going to show you in just a few moments that you can go on, if you really want to know if it works or not, you can go on YouTube or go on Google and you can find all sorts of different reports that have been done by research institutions like NASA. Universities all over the world have done studies, and it works. But it only works under intelligent control, intelligent injection. Meaning as you're injecting a certain amount or as you're at a certain RPMs, it's metered as it goes into the cylinder and mixes with the gasoline. The gasoline injectors are also throttled up or down. All the lean and rich fuel mixtures, all sorts of different parameters have to be measured and manipulated in real time to sort of get any net effect out of this. And when you learn about HHO itself, and you learn what actually happens in the combustion chamber of these systems, of these cars when you're injecting this gas, you start to see that sometimes there's a such thing as too much HHO. You can inject some of these people running 40, 50 amps in their vehicles are probably putting way too much gas in that engine at once. Because it doesn't take but a very minute amount of this gas to make a change. And all you're really wanting to do with the gas itself is use it as a additive or a catalyst to your gasoline, create a more complete burn. And so you don't need to really flood the piston inside the combustion chamber. You don't need to flood that with a bunch of gas, HHO gas, because it's going to change the entire burn ratio and mixture of the gasoline when it comes in. And so it's going to either burn rich, lean, what have you, but it's going to throw off all sorts of different things with the system. But at the same time, that's been pushed really, really, really hard on YouTube and on the internet. Miles per gallon boosting, really pushed. And the automobile companies, in my opinion, are the ones that's going to have to go in and recognize the gas, and I'm sure they have already done it, go in and do manipulation of the computer system, the sensors, and create programs so when you get into the vehicle, you say, well, I've got an onboard HHO system, I want to use this. Flip it on, and it actually understands that you've got that gas on, and it monitors it on demand. Throttling down the road at full blast, it throttles down the gasoline input and throttles up the HHO production. And you just can't, what I'm trying to say is you just can't bolt one of these things on and expect it to give you excellent results. And you got a lot of misinformation, and people selling the stuff are saying 30, 40, 50% increase in gains. I think that may be possible, but there's a lot of other things that have to be done and taken into consideration before that even happens. But we're missing the point here. What I'm really trying to say is that there are a million other uses for water electrolysis and HHO other than the push on the miles per gallon boosting. And in some ways it's much easier to do and cheaper to do than trying to bolt one on your vehicle and save a few bucks in gasoline or diesel. I do think it works, and again, in a little bit we're going to go over a couple things to let you go down your own path to figure it out for yourself. And on my own personal vehicle, I just put in I only run mine at like 5-8 amps on my vehicle, and it seems to be enough gas to have a very minimal effect as far as boosting power and keeping the engine clean, things like that. I actually had a negative effect when I put more gas into it, and I understand now why that is, because I was not using any manipulation of the system. The computer and the truck didn't understand it. Give me a moment here and come right back. I had to do another video screen catch on this. This freeware version of this software only gives me 15 minutes. I didn't really want the video to be long, but you know, I guess I got a lot to say. And if you really want to know, you know, if you're really interested in all this technology, you know, at least try to listen to any video all the way, and you know, even videos that you think are terrible and boring, sometimes you get a little bit out of every bit of it. So, but you know, again, I on my YouTube channel, I try to really express how I feel at the present moment. But at any rate, you know, as far as the HHO boosters go on the vehicles, you know, there's information to suggest it does work to a certain degree, but it's a complex thing, and you know, the automobile companies have to be in on it too, and they have to actually release vehicles that have the software built in to understand and recognize that you're, you know, supplementing or injecting HHO gas into it, and you know, do things on demand, throttle it up and down, and the RPMs are up and down. I mean, all different things. But my point is that because of all the other parameters that have to be monitored and changed on an automobile, most people are going to bolt one of these things on and get a negative effect, if any effect at all. And it has caused quite a bit of negativity to be brought about in the community, and it really sucks. But a part of me feels like the HHO was brought out on YouTube in the form of miles per gallon boosters to actually mislead and misguide and misinform people and keep them looking at this when you should be looking at this. I feel the same way about the Myers Tech now. I've done a bit more research into it. I still feel like to this day that Myers concepts were correct, and you know, one day, you know, openly we'll be able to, you know, make a car run off of water. But so part of me feels like his patents were just downright manipulated and changed and released out into the public domain intentionally that way. And the individuals and groups out there that are following to a T Myers patents, they may get things to work and little flashy lights here and there, and they get some high voltage and be able to break it up, and a little bit of water, and might be able to get, you know, a liter per minute of production or what have you. But for the most part, it should be obvious to anybody right now that have been in this for a long time, unless they are just completely just mind controlled and so far up in cloud nine with the research, and or either they've got a hold of God and God of the religions, the side of things, and that's sort of got a stranglehold on them as well. But for people, you know, for me personally, since I've been involved for such a while and been looking at it, I just feel like that you know, the internet itself, even though it's a very, very useful tool and it's getting us there slowly but surely, I think it's been it's monitored. Obviously, we all know that, but I also think that it's been you know, stuff has been suppressed from us. Things going on right now on YouTube. But you know, so many things are running through my mind right now. It's like I don't know where to begin and start, and how I want to bring in what I want to talk about. If I should have just started talking about it to begin with, but I'm just really saddened, you know, that this type of information has not gone any further than what it has in the community. I mean, you got these people trying to do something as complex as run a daggone car, and yet nobody knows how to produce and purify and store the gases and use it later. I don't get it, and that's not on YouTube. It's not on YouTube at all. You show me where to build a homebrew hydrogen split cell system that purifies and can store the gas, and you can do it with off-the-shelf parts. I know it can be done, but you show me one on YouTube, I'd appreciate it. Also show me something on YouTube where they're building, other than a crude experiment on a bench top, or they're building solid state fuel cells off of this type of technology, using homebrewed parts off the shelf. Show me. Not gonna find it. Not on YouTube anyway. And for people that start this research, at this present moment in time, they started on YouTube. Why? Well, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, I've heard the saying also that a video's got to be worth 10,000 words. And that's true. A video, for me especially, if I wanted to do something like rebuild a engine, it'd be much easier and better to see this done on a high definition video, start to finish, than it would be on paper. Something that complex anyway, from start to finish. Certain simple things, or you can get it out of a patent or off of a set of plans quite easily. But it just brings the convenience factor up, is all I'm trying to say. And not gonna find this stuff on YouTube. You really got to dig online and read books, and you really got to go back sometimes 100 years at least, when this technology began to flourish a little bit and be experimented with. You almost got to go back that far, and I have gone back that far, and it's mind-blowing what they were doing years back, before gasoline and oil really became prime movers for us in our society. What they were doing with hydrogen research, what they were doing with radiant energy, and all these different types of exotic forms of energy research. I'm especially astounded at what they have done with hydrogen, and even some of the HHO stuff. But my point is you can't get on YouTube and figure out how to store these things. And then when I first got into it, I wanted to develop a heater, and I couldn't find any information on it, so I got on YouTube, and there's really no information there either. There's a few crude experiments, and even I've done a few of those, but having somebody put something together that was really well thought out, well engineered, nothing. And you won't find really much as far as reports either when you search on Google. But for the life of me, I really couldn't understand that. All these thousands of people online right now that are, especially in HHO and hydrogen, that are all interested in this stuff. And they're so tied up in the Stanley Meyer run your car on water, not scam, but misdirection scheme going on, propaganda, that they don't even know how to do something as simple as just using solar panel, hook it to an electrolysis cell, a bigger one than the little tiny nickel ones you can get off eBay, and make enough gas to store it, and then use it later on, or use it in a fuel cell. They can't even do something as simple as that. I can't understand that. It's like, why aren't you guys working on useful product line? You can even take the Stanley Myers tech and make useful product line out of it. Why are you taking it so far to try to get the car to run on water? I'm cold. And then you see these people, these same people that are working on these, especially HHO and hydrogen, are working on this stuff, and they're in their little garage or shop, and it's freezing damn cold, and they're trying to get a car to run off water. It looked like to me, you need to be trying to figure out how to build a heater. God knows, it bothers me. I'm so far in. I used to look up to some of these people, but it's like, God knows, what are you doing? Are you really trying to take this anywhere? What are you doing? But nonetheless, my main focus when I got into this, my main goal was, again, trying to store hydrogen, trying to learn how to do that. Thought there would be a multitude and bunch of different videos on YouTube about it, but there's really not. Now, so we've been working on trying to develop a split cell for a very long time, and that's also limited in scope and information, so it took me longer than I expected to really put one together. It's so daggone simple. I don't know why, It's not on YouTube like this, or more of them, but nonetheless, it's out there. I developed that, and go here and check out my products here, and I got that finished, which was a milestone for me. I released this out on the Smart Scarecrow show. For you, those of you who know what that is, you've probably seen it if you follow me. If you don't know what that is, just type in Smart Scarecrow show on YouTube. Very great to go through and listen to some of the interviews done over the years. But I released this design out right now. You can get the plans for it if you'd like, but what this device does is actually separate the hydrogen and oxygen inside the split cell. It's not, wouldn't guess it's 100% pure. Hasn't been totally tested yet. But the fact is that's much purer than HHO, and it can be bottled. I have learned that you can bottle off of these types of electrolysis cells. You're not going to find that information on YouTube, but it can be done. How they're doing it is through a catalytic recombiner process. It's essentially how a fuel cell works as well. But what they're doing is out the output, say this was the hydrogen side right here, and this was the oxygen. Off the output, they're feeding that gas into a catalytic recombiner. It seems to be essentially a tube of beads that are coated with a reactive metal such as platinum or palladium. And what's interesting about those two metals, actually the reaction happens in nickel. It happens in, it's been documented in minute properties in copper as well. But the absolute best reactions seem to be taking place with the palladium and platinum. And what happens is essentially as that gas is flowing through that tube of those microbeads that are coated with that platinum or palladium, something called a catalytic reaction takes place. And it's a very well known process, and your car, and we're going to get to that as well, your vehicle has a catalytic converter that does the same thing. But essentially as the gas passes through that, it has that oxygen mixed in with it. As it flows over that those beads that are coated in that noble metal, there's a reaction taking place in which the available hydrogen and available oxygen are recombining. If you had a major excess of hydrogen and just a little tiny bit of oxygen, it would take that little bit of oxygen along with a little bit of hydrogen out of that excess, and it would recombine them to form water. And out of this process, you can get up to like 99.9999% purity with this catalytic process of stripping the oxygen off of the hydrogen gas out of these split cells. It's not the only way. I come to find out it doesn't seem to be the only way to purify the gas out of the split cells, but it is a very simple way to do it, and very effective, and based on some of the other efficiency rates of some of the other processes, seems to be one of the most purest forms is this catalytic process. And apparently you can purchase the beads online if you do some research. You can purchase them online to build your own little catalytic recombiner. You pass this gas through off this type of split cell, and then after it comes out of the split cell as pretty pure hydrogen, you can send to a tank to be stored at low pressure, or send to a compressor to be compressed to high volume. And very simple process. The information I found thus far, people have been doing this over the years, over the decades, with very crude materials. It's been done by individuals, but most of this information that I'm able to gather at the moment, when it was put out, the internet wasn't available at the time it was put out, but it was in publications and in magazines, but it wasn't widespread, and to this day. Let me go ahead and stop this, but we'll continue. And as I was saying, to this day, the information is very hard to find on the internet and not readily available on sites like YouTube for people that want to know how to do it. And after reading some of these reports and seeing some of these systems and learning a little bit about it, I realized that this stuff is not very expensive. Right now we have more tools and more parts and access to more materials than we ever have very easily, especially in America, where this stuff should really be taking hold as well, but it's not. But I realize that this stuff is not very hard to do. It's not, and it's not very expensive to do. It's expensive for me to do it right now because I'm having to custom build everything, and I'm having to research and develop this stuff myself, by myself, because nobody else, there's nothing available online, and nobody else is doing it online as far as blue collar community. I realize that this stuff is very huge in industry. NASA uses it on a daily basis, has been using it, but they don't, because they're not using their money, they're using our money to research and develop the stuff. At the end of the day, they're going to use the most expensive equipment they can find and make it as complex as possible to make it work. And so don't have to be that way. I mean, it takes the garage engineers and the small-time inventors to figure out ways to make it economical, I guess. I don't think that the economics of some of this stuff is going to come from these corporations, because number one, they don't research and develop with that mindset, really, when it comes to the little people. They always have to have economics involved, but at the end of the day, some of these companies and these corporations, they don't really work these things out to be affordable to everyday Joes. This hydrogen research has been going on, for hundreds of years, and a lot's been figured out. It's hard for me to even know where to go with this video, but as far as the split cell goes, I kind of want to just go ahead and start easing into what I want to talk about. But as far as the split cell goes, this is a crude split cell. It works. There's other ways to do it, more expensive ways to do it. This is about the cheapest. And so I wanted again, I looked for ways to purify the gas, and people in the community wouldn't tell me or didn't know, mostly didn't know, but there have been people that have supposedly successfully built purifying storage systems off of this, but they didn't really give me the details. Not sure why. Their excuse was basically it's dangerous, and yes, it's dangerous. Any of this stuff is dangerous, but what's even more dangerous is not giving the information out to people and letting it come out and continuing to use oil. And anyway, let's move forward. But essentially, you have to figure out a way to, again, purify the gas and then send it to be stored. And then I also realized that some of the storage concepts were very simple as well. They were using just normal propane tanks. Some even using the 55-gallon steel drums to store these gases in. You don't have to store at very high pressures. You can store it 100, 200 psi in one of these tanks and get a little bit of work out of it. Be able to do a few things with it. To get the energy densities with using just pure hydrogen anyway, with storing it. You have to store, there's many different ways to store it, but you have to store at very high pressures, 3,000 to 5,000 psi, to get the same energy density as you would a tank of, say, propane or natural gas, or even a tank of gasoline. You have to store at really high pressures, but can also be done, with a little ingenuity. It's expensive to build those systems, but can be done and can be safe. But we don't really need to store at high pressures anymore, hydrogen, because we have something called hydride technology. And this is also something that has been taken in the corporation side of things to the point where it's actually very cheap to do. They're actually building hydride polymers and little pellets and things like that are very easy. And what a hydride does is it essentially soaks up the hydrogen inside of it like a sponge, and soaks it up into the structure of the material, and you can store that material in a tank and at very low pressures, and you use a little bit of heat to extract the hydrogen off of it. Metal hydrides like palladium and platinum, things like that. Those types of metals can be used for those hydrides, but they're very expensive, and can also break down over time from, I guess, what they call the hydrogen embrittlement. But this has been something that, for me, as I'm looking at this research, has kind of been solved already. But they're not putting it into practice on a mainstream scale and putting mainstream products out there that sort of utilize these new materials. But at any rate, I went through this to take it one step at a time. I got the split cell done, or at least I can make it larger if I wanted more output. Figured out what to do to actually purify the gas. And as I was studying that, I come across a couple of things that this video is going to be mainly about, in the end anyway. Now, this particular gas, when you send it through that what's called a catalytic recombiner, and you send it through that, the platinum or palladium, it has the noble metal, it has a reaction with it that basically converts the excess oxygen in that mix. It takes and forms it back in the water with hydrogen. And so that's how you get the pure gases out of it. But in that reaction, the reaction is very interesting in itself. The same reaction takes place in what we call a fuel cell. And this is why platinum and palladium are used in these fuel cells, is because the metal is very good at this particular reaction. And when they're in the presence of hydrogen and oxygen, and it forms back into water, creates a couple of things with that that's very useful. Creates heat, and it also creates electricity. And this is how, at least one type of fuel cell works. We're using, polymer membranes that are sprayed with the platinum or palladium coating on them. They use that catalytic reaction between the hydrogen and oxygen to not only recombine those two gases back in the water, but also create heat and also create electricity. And so, for the life of me, I wonder why I didn't put two and two together, years back when I started the research. But I started to look into this catalytic effect, and I started to realize, I was like, well, I'm also after heater applications for this. If this creates heat, then is it possible that this could be a really effective heater application as well? And so I started doing a little bit of research online on catalytic heaters. And what I found interesting was some of the stuff was right in my face the whole time, and other people's face, and they didn't even know to put the two together. But you could actually purchase catalytic heaters already put together, and they're designed for natural gas or propane, and they use inputs of hydrocarbons and disperse it over a catalytic pad that is basically sprayed with precious metals, platinum, palladium, and it creates the same effect. They're what they call combustionless or excuse me, flameless, and it's a way of actually burning or combusting the gas without an actual flame. It has to be there. And I've seen these. I've seen them in use. My buddy has one, a small one that he uses for camping and for hunting, that Coleman builds. It's a real tiny one. Takes a little bit of propane. I've seen big ones as well. And I started to wonder. I was like, well, if this process has actually been developed to the point where they're using it for heaters, why not hydrogen or HHO? Started to hit a brick wall when I went on YouTube and started typing in keywords, catalytic HHO combustion, or HHO catalytic heater, or hydrogen catalytic heater. Got very few results back from that, if any at all. And I wondered, I'm like, well, why isn't nobody doing this? Why isn't nobody experimenting with this? It seems very interesting. And not only can you create pure water out of this and clean off the hydrogen out of your split cell using this type of process, but you can also create heat and electricity. I also found out that you can use other metals for this, nickel being one of them. Nickel is also one of the reactive metals that will work in the same way, and actually some of the alkaline fuel cells use nickel in them. Cold fusion, which we're going to get to as well, actually uses nickel as well. But you could use nickel as well if you wanted to. But I started to hit a brick wall on YouTube looking for people that have done experiments with this. So I started doing Google searches and kind of hit a brick wall as well. I did, however, find quite a bit of information on catalytic hydrogen heaters. But again, built and tested by very large institutions. A lot of the reports that I found were funded by the Department of Energy. Some of this stuff that I found goes back to the 30s. This stuff has been done and continues to be researched in big corporations, and yet nobody in the YouTube community or even online that are interested in this particular technology have played around with it. I've done any experiments with it. I also found out that with this process, this catalytic process, there have been a few publications over the years that have converted catalytic heaters that are meant for propane or natural gas, have converted them over to hydrogen, and this was bottled hydrogen, just pure hydrogen. And a lot of these catalytic heaters, there's a like a glow plug, or they're preheating the gas or the material itself to start the process. But one thing interesting about hydrogen is it will work at room temperature. It will interact with that metal, that reactive metal, at room temperature, and so the heat starts almost immediately. And you don't need a glow plug or batteries for these heaters, or for it to be plugged in to electricity. The process will begin almost immediately. They have converted it over. There's a few documentations on it. Like I said, nothing's on YouTube, but it has been converted over to create a catalytic heating reaction for use for space heating. We're using hydrogen. Thought it was very interesting. Looks like in the report they even contacted the manufacturer, and never occurred to them to use pure hydrogen, and they thought it was also interesting. They didn't need a exterior heat source to preheat the material to start the effect. And this video is about to end. We're getting on to 15 minutes here, but hope you stay tuned. We're going to pop on another one in just a moment. And so again, these catalytic heaters are already on the market and already set up the same way. But at the point in time, I was still interested in trying to figure out, what I needed to do to build a catalytic recombiner for my split cell. So I also started looking at other off-the-shelf parts. And as I was doing this, I wasn't really looking at it as a heater side of things. Nobody's been doing it. I felt like there was nothing to it, but I was looking for off-the-shelf parts that could help me with this, and I needed to figure out what I could use that was off the shelf that had some of these precious metals inside of it. And it occurred to me that a automobile catalytic converter had these precious metals, these noble metals inside of it. And so where is it at? Let me find it here. So I did a little bit of research on automobile catalytic converters, and it's kind of funny that it kind of worked out this way, kind of using their own technology against them. But the catalytic converter basically does the same thing as what the recombiner is, and what I wanted to use for the split cell. Exhaust gas in, and through this catalytic process, it actually converts it over. And what's coming out, you got your nitrogen, your CO2, and water. So when I saw water, I said, well, then there's no reason why we can't use a catalytic converter, or at least a new one, in some way, and use an off-the-shelf part already put together to basically put on the split cell and create essentially a heating source, or excuse me, a source of recombining that excess oxygen that's in that mix with the hydrogen there, and making water, and sending pure hydrogen out of my homebrew split cell. I thought it was possible to use build a homebrew recombiner as well. And the way I develop, I try to use off-the-shelf parts to do that. And so started looking at this catalytic converter, and quite honestly, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not very good at building engines and everything like that, so I don't really have one available at the time, other than what was installed on my personal vehicles. But got a friend that's pretty much been with me all the way in this research, or almost all the way. We met maybe about a year or two after I got into the research. And he's by far the single most important person that I would consider a friend in this research that I've made. He's helped me out a lot. We bounced ideas off each other. He sent me things, I've sent him things. We discuss this technology on a regular basis. And quite honestly, some of the other people in the community that I once looked up to, I've asked several questions to. They never get back with me, either because they're busy, or they ignored me, or I don't know. But he seemed to be, I was kind of, he seemed to be, when I started to get to know him more, he kind of reminded me of myself and my attitude. He's got a little bit more aggressive attitude when it comes to this research and the people that are in it than I do. I try to get along with everybody and be friends with everybody, at least in this research, because it's very important. No matter who you are, it's important that you're even looking at it, and I congratulate you on that. But his attitude towards everybody is the same way I am with everything else, and with everybody else around me in my personal life. If you knew me personally, you'd think I was a real asshole. You'd know I was a real asshole, because I don't take too kindly to pretty much anybody or anything anymore. Especially now. I was once a really bitter person, but I don't now, because I understand a lot better how all this stuff works and what's going on, and I'm pretty pissed off. And anyway, when Neal Ward, his YouTube channel is Hydro Fuel in Canada. I love his logo. Say no. Little stick man having a gas pump stuck up his ass. It's perfect. Kind of fits his personality. Kind of fits mine if you knew me personally. But Neal has really become a great friend of mine, I have to say. One of my only friends in the research, really, that I've really kept up with. We pretty much speak on a sometimes daily basis, at least through email, and speak on the phone a lot. And you know what I gather, you know, after talking to him a long time, and you know, I understand that he's really not a bad guy. He really wants to see real change. He was looking for heater technologies as well with this stuff. He's been trying to develop this stuff as well. He lives up in Canada, where I don't think I could live at this time of year. I can barely handle it here where I'm at, on the Middle Eastern side of the United States. But anyway, he was looking for the same thing. We've been both bouncing ideas off each other for a couple years now on this heating technology. And you know, I was looking for the split cell, and a lot of different stuff here I wanted to go through. I'm trying to get all these tabs up here, trying to find something. But when I was looking at this catalytic converter, I saw that it had a lot of the same materials inside of it, and usually a stainless steel housing back here, and it would be good for, you know, corrosion resistance. It just seemed perfect for what I wanted to use it for. And at the time, I just wanted to use it for a recombiner. And I didn't have anything at the time, but Neal, he basically runs an auto repair shop. And so I emailed Neal. I said, hey man, I was like, listen, I was like, I really feel like that, you know, on my quest for trying to purify this gas out of the split cell, you know, based on what I'm going to need, I really feel like an automobile catalytic converter would do the job quite nicely, and it would be off the shelf. I know you run your shop. Is there any way you could basically do an experiment with me? I just want you to, you know, inject the gas into it and see what happens. I also told him that, you know, I had read about, you know, catalytic heating and the heating effect that it would have. That it's possible that, you know, I wanted to also light the gas and put on the substrate in there to try to heat it up. Sort of like what people are doing with the copper pipes. When you start looking at heater technology or HHO heating on YouTube, a number of different experiments I sent to him. I wanted him to try. And he was, oh sure, we'll get it done. And the next day he went out to his shop and did a really crude experiment with this stuff, and I thought it was pretty amazing. He didn't even have to light the gas, and he just pushed it in. He was only about a liter per minute, and pushed it into this catalytic converter. And he's got videos of it. They're probably private or unlisted at the present moment. It's up to him to really release those. I haven't really started my own experiments in this yet, mainly due to lack of finances right now at this point in time, but I'm going to get to it. But based on, you know, what he showed me and what we had talked about, it's definitely something to keep looking at. But at any rate, he injected the gas into this catalytic converter off a vehicle and was getting heat out of it. A substantial amount of heat for how much gas he was pushing into it. I mean, these catalytic converters are pretty large. They are, where is this thing at? There it is. I mean, they're, you know, 2 to 4 inches in the excess and the inlets and outlets, and then they're, you know, 4 or 6 inches in girth, and stainless steel, heavy duty stainless steel, heavy gauge in here. And I mean, it would take a lot of energy to heat that up pretty good. But when he was injecting this gas, he was getting, you know, and this is crude experiment with improper seals, and it was leaking, and he was getting, you know, 200, 300, 400 degrees out of this thing. And also pure water was coming out the exit end of it as well. So it sort of proved that this could be used. It wasn't designed and built to be used in this fashion, but number one, it could be used to as a recombiner off the split cells to create pure hydrogen. And again, this particular process and this catalytic process is one of the highest purity processes of actually purifying hydrogen. And so you can buy these things right off the shelf, brand new. Old one, he actually started with an old one. It does work, but they already have all kinds of nasties inside of it. So I suggest if you experiment with it, you probably want a new one to go ahead with it. But was creating pure water out of it, which was great. It proved to me that you could use this straight off the shelf and possibly purify your hydrogen if you needed to send it for bottling. But the amount of heat that he was getting out of this thing was kind of interesting, and it kind of also showed that you could use this as an on-demand heater. He was only pushing about a liter per minute in it, and you can 12-volt system, you know, a couple hundred watts. You know, most everybody out there that can build a HHO device has a system that could do roughly a liter per minute on these small-scale systems. But he was getting a lot of heat output with it, and so seemed to be getting more heat output doing it this way than he was by lighting the gas itself and placing it on the substrate to try to radiate and heat up like you would on the copper pipe array that everybody on YouTube is trying to play around with when they're trying to build a heater out of this stuff small scale. So seemed to be more efficient than that, and it actually seemed to be more efficient than some of the electric space heaters. So I became really intrigued by not just the process of recombining it back to water to clean the hydrogen gas, but I became pretty intrigued on a catalytic heater based on HHO. So I started doing a lot of research on it, and couldn't find a whole lot. We'll get back to my buddy Neal in just a few moments, but couldn't find a lot of it. And so what I can say is that if you really want to dig deep with this technology, you will go on YouTube or Google and type in keywords and download the PDFs. This is just a small section of PDFs and reports that I have found on hydrogen, fuel cells, HHO. These reports are done by some major names, some big names. Some of these reports are very old. Some of these reports go back to the 20s and 30s. Some of these were done by universities. There's a few that I've got that were done by NASA. All different kinds of things as it relates to hydrogen technology. And now, when I first got into the research, in hindsight, I wish I would have looked at these first, but as I look back on it and think about it now, I wouldn't begin to understand some of the stuff that they're doing in some of these reports. Number one, because again, they're using really million-dollar research laboratories, and they have all types of fancy equipment, and they're using all types of exotic materials, and just really not affordable for the average Joe. And then some of these reports get mixed in with a lot of math and a lot of graphs and just really detailed information. And I'm like, just get to the point. Does it work or does it not? And how did you do it? It's just, some of these reports with these big companies, they have to be that extensive. They have to go through every detail. But again, this is just a few of them that I have. They're all over Google. The information's out there. It's just, do you want to go and search for it yourself? This is where you need to go to find the information that we're looking for as it pertains to what we're talking about right now. So go back over here. So I did find quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, I found little to no information on HHO catalytic combustion. I did find information on hydrogen catalytic combustion, but again, that was all done by a lot. And as I was saying, it was all done by really large institutions. And one big problem you're going to find with HHO research is you're not going to find, even with these big research institutions that I had found, in their reports, it was next to nothing about on-demand HHO. It was all just based on H2 or hydrogen, and that seems to be the problem. Neal, after he started doing the experiments for me and figured out that there was quite a bit of heat out of it, he did some things, and he actually found some reports as well that were pretty interesting. And one of them being, let's see here. One of them being is the reactions between hydrogen and oxygen by catalysts in the thermal reaction. This was done by Oak Ridge National Laboratory. If you notice up here, this was once classified. It was declassified. This was put out secret security information. This was put out on the 50s, January 15th, 1952. Subject category, reactors, research, and power. This is a pretty interesting report. This is a report as well on just basically, it's not HHO, pure HHO is hydrogen. But he found this report that was done in the 50s on catalytic reactions. And a chart here that was pretty interesting. Flow rate at 1 liter per minute. Temp of the gas is 144 Celsius, and then max temp in the catalytic converter is 242. And they just go through these different ones. When you get up to these little higher outputs, you get more. And this is in Celsius and not Fahrenheit, and Fahrenheit would be a little bit more than that. But it just shows that you could get this thing pretty hot. These little reactors, or catalytic recombiners, so to speak. And again, this is just hydrogen. Now, HHO is a special gas for me. Has some really unique and interesting properties. And I think these people, like this Oak Ridge National Laboratory, funded by the U.S. Department of Energy in a lot of ways, and I think they know that. I think a lot of these reports that were put out by these big institutions that I have here were put out just based on H2 or hydrogen and nothing on HHO because of what it's capable of. But nonetheless, some of these companies have done things. This was by the University of Idaho doing an effect of brown gas enriched hydrocarbon combustion on engine emissions and performance. Basically, HHO injection submitted to the National Science Foundation. This basically proves that HHO injection does work with intelligent injection and monitoring. Another one where they're actually injecting HHO or hydrogen into furnace systems and causing a more complete burn and more heat output. This was done out of a research institution in Canada, I assume, and all kinds of information in these, all kinds of where they're set up, and they give you the conclusions. And actually, HHO right now is being utilized on an industrial scale on coal-fired and coal-fired plants, things like that. They're injecting into the exhaust to sort of clean that before it reaches the exit of the building or the. But so much different stuff. Reports this is just a few of them. That were done. There's been reports by NASA. This is another one that they're reducing sulfur oxide on emissions with this particular gas. All kinds of math, but it just, if you're really looking for it, there is proof out there. There is documentation. There is math, and there has been experiments and things done by big research institutions on HHO injection that proved that it does indeed work. But it seems to be, after reading all these reports, haven't been totally in depth and went to a fine-tooth comb with all of these reports. There's tons of them if you really look for it, just, well, not really tons, but a few dozen of them if you're really aiming to look for it. But once you read them, you realize that you have to have intelligent injection of it to really make a difference. But as I was saying, these are really neither here nor there. These types of reports, you can go look for them if you want. My basic interest in this was, at the present moment, was in these catalytic reactions. And again, this report was done, and they were using some of this information in the Manhattan Project. And again, this was once classified information, and it's really based on just hydrogen and not HHO. I seem to have hit a brick wall everywhere, on YouTube as well, on some of this stuff as it pertains to HHO. You can't get BTU numbers. Don't really understand why it reacts to different materials in the way it does, and it seems to be a bit of a mystery, and I've kind of figured out why over the years. I don't understand it all myself, but this brown gas, what exactly is it? Put out May 1st, 2008 by Chris Ekman. This is a PDF file you can find on Google as well. It sort of goes through, but it sort of touches on some of the, they did some tests on it, sort of touches on some of the interesting properties. Sort of notes George Wiseman, and he's another guy that was doing some research into this years back. Still runs a website today that has some good information. We're actually going to show that in a few moments. But it goes through and does some experiments and tries to determine what brown gas is, and it's still kind of inconclusive as to what it actually is. Wiseman calls it electrically expanded water. When you get into this research, you see that HHO has an exotic side to it. They've actually measured heavy water inside of the reservoirs of these HHO systems after a certain period of running, deuterium and tritium. It's really a complex idea, but HHO seems to be more energetic than hydrogen alone. And actually, in my own experiments, HHO seems to be more energetic than hydrogen and oxygen that's been split off and then tried to recombine it. I've tried to meter it back in off my split cell, and I can't get the same explosive power that I can get from just pure Brown's gas, HHO gas, hydroxy gas, oxyhydrogen gas, whatever, pure straight out of the cell. Seems to be more energetic than hydrogen, pure hydrogen mixed in with oxygen, tried to meter it back in. Even if you try to do the 2-to-1 mixture, it still doesn't seem to be as energetic. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but either way, HHO has a lot of unique uses and properties that still is yet to be determined and understood. I'm still having a hard time finding any information as it pertains to HHO itself, because it really doesn't exist. Even with all of these reports, there's no information when it comes to this coming from some of these big research institutions. I know they've done the research, but they haven't put the information out. I think there's a reason for that, and I think I've stumbled across that. Can't say for sure, more testing has to be done, but I think I've stumbled across why there's not a lot of information as it pertains to HHO. Now, this particular report, very interesting, but it just proves to me that this stuff has been done a long time ago by all these companies, and they could have very well developed this stuff for the average Joe to be in use. But again, my grandparents, my parents, and myself have never used any of this stuff at all, and so obviously they were using it for their own benefit, their own personal agenda. I think a lot of this stuff was being studied for the development of the atomic bomb, and a lot of for the space industry. A lot of this, they use hydrogen and oxygen in the space industry as well, and fuel cells. But they were not researching this stuff for us. Obviously, they were not researching it to build us heaters. They were not researching it to build us solar hydrogen units where we can store the gas during the summer or when there's excess wind, or what have you, and be able to use it again in the form of the gas itself for heaters or for fuel cells or what have you. They were not doing these experiments and this work because of that. Here's another one here. Oh man, I mean, these reports, I mean, this is a 30 kilowatt hydrogen catalytic heater that was developed. 30 kilowatt, I'm just trying to freaking warm my toes. But this is another, and this was done by another research laboratory for the Department of Energy. You'll notice a lot of this stuff is funded by the Department of Energy. I wonder why that is, and yet they didn't fund it for us. They didn't use the information in the products to develop stuff for us. But nonetheless, there is a little bit of information on hydrogen catalytic heater technology. There's really not any commercial products available that utilize hydrogen as the fuel source for these types of heaters. There has been some simple conversions done, but again, it's only pure H2 that was bottled and compressed, coming out of a compressed bottle. So, started doing a little bit of digging, a little bit more on Google. Can't find it on YouTube, so you have to go to Google. And found a little bit of different information on this. And let's see where we're going with this right now. We'll go here to George Wiseman's site at eagle-research.com. Mr. Wiseman was also once a very prevalent researcher of this stuff. He's got a wealth of information on his website, and one of them is labeled politically hot brown gas uses, where they go through some of the exotic uses of brown gas. One of them, and this is about the only thing I've been able to find on this, one of them states super efficient room heating. Generally, brown gas is a poor way to space heat because the flame radiates very little infrared heat energy. However, there is evidence that using catalytic materials, a brown gas heater can be constructed that radiates huge amounts of heat, does not require any room venting. The efficiency stated are 400%. In other words, a 1000 watt input will produce 4000 watts of heat. Eagle Research has not yet verified this, but has seen enough evidence to list it here. Now, what I have to say to Eagle Research is, this guy, he's done a lot for the community, and he developed this water torch, a high power water torch, but put out a statement like that, and you have this big torch system and all this information, that would have been very simple to test that idea out. Now, searching on HHO catalytic heater heating experiments and technology, this is about the only website that even mentions this. And if you just come to his website, to his homepage, you'll actually miss this. It also has some very interesting other properties, HHO as well, which I can attest for. Last time I saw Wiseman on YouTube, he was talking about some of the health benefits, which is cool, but it's still another fringe side that's going to take a lot of major testing to actually prove. But I've actually had people purchase, the actual doctors purchase things like flashback arresters from me that were doing HHO treatments to their patients, and were telling me that it was basically healing wounds faster, all kinds of different cool things. But this heating technology was something that is easy to prove or disprove, but nobody did it. Nobody has done it, and basically this guy, which was supposed to be super cool back in the day with this research, really just basically says, heard it works, think it works, don't know if it works, but I'll give you a brief. Give me 1 second here. And as I was saying, this pretty much is really it. There's a couple other mentions on YouTube or on the internet as it pertains to catalytic combustion of HHO. But for the most part, this is about as good as it gets. And I tried to pull PDF reports, all of these files that I've got. Like I said, this is not all of them. I've got tons of these files as it pertains to utilization of hydrogen and HHO, and not a single one of them talk about HHO catalytic reactions at all. And I'm sure that these big companies did research on it and has information, but they didn't release it out into the public. The information is not on YouTube, is not being used. There's a lot of people that have been trying to build HHO heaters for a long time, or hydrogen heaters for a long time, myself included, that had no clue about this. It's even kind of funny that my buddy here, Neal, I'm not picking on him, but it's kind of funny that he's been a mechanic for quite some time, as he's been in this research, and didn't know that this would work as well. And so a lot of times, if you don't know something works, you don't know to try it, you don't do it. And so this is, I just feel like that this particular thing that I've stumbled across, there's more to it than meets the eye. And it's been kind of not talked about and kept away from the people for that simple fact. None of these places have released information on this because of where it could take you and what it could do. But nonetheless, again, my buddy Neal did some experiments for me. He's got video. You can ask him to release them if he wants to. I don't care, you know, if he releases them or not. I'm going to start doing some experiments as well. But if you're looking for HHO heating technologies, I'd say to look at the catalytic combustion process. One thing that we're finding out is that, again, you don't have to light the tube or light your torch when you're injecting into the catalytic converter. The process for this, it does not need any external heat. It actually creates heat. It will start almost immediately at room temperature and will start to raise in temperature as it goes. The problem that we're coming into with pure HHO right now is flashback. It gets the material so hot that it actually can flash back to the actual torch itself, and basically light your torch, and the process doesn't work. Essentially, after looking at it now, I don't think that I think this is the smartest way to go about heating with HHO, and I'm going to go through in just a moment to tell you why. It could be the safest as well. I don't think you need very much. I think you could pump like an eighth of a liter per minute to a quarter of a liter per minute, these small tiny catalytic heaters off the shelf like Coleman sells, and it would actually give you the same process, and you're looking at like 20-30 watt heater that, you know, puts out a pretty substantial amount of heat. But it kind of dawned on me after we were looking at this, and I started thinking about this. I'm like, wait a minute, that kind of reminds me of something else. Can we say, I dubbed this the HCAT. After I started reading the information and kind of off of George's site, that it could produce what we would call an over unity effect. And then I started seeing that there was next to no information on it, and none of these big research institutions and like NASA were putting anything out in the open on this stuff, and started to say, well, maybe he is right, maybe there is something to it. At this point in time, I really, more testing has to be done. I don't really care if there's over unity effect. It seems to be a very interesting way to use HHO for heating, a very cool way of doing it as well. So I still think we need to move forward with running tests on this. But I started to put two and two together, and I started saying, well, why, I also didn't find any on-demand HHO catalytic heaters, or even any on-demand hydrogen catalytic heaters, that were doing tests where they were doing, electric resistive heater at the same wattage versus an on-demand HHO or hydrogen catalytic heater. There's actually not much testing even being done on where people are using. Most people that are trying to build heaters out of this stuff are using the flame itself on something, trying to heat a flame up, substrate up, or of some kind, because of the qualities of the gas. But I think that that's not the way to go when you're trying to build a heater out of this. I think that the catalytic reaction is the way to go. But as I started looking at this, I started to say, that process, if that is true, that is creating an excess of heat, sounds to me like what we call a cold fusion, or the current LENR, low energy nuclear reactions. Seems to be sort of along the same lines. So I recall from my research, most of those are what they call nickel hydrogen reactors, where they're using powder nickel. And I recall from my research that nickel is also a reactive metal that is used in this same process. That can it's actually used in certain fuel cells. And nickel is used because it's much cheaper and easier to obtain in these reactors than something like down here, platinum or palladium. Actually, it seems to be that palladium is the best reactive metal to use in these, but obviously if you're trying to build one of these reactors on a commercial grade mass quantity scale, it'd be very expensive to try to use palladium or platinum. And so they went with nickel, and for the longest time I told myself a while back, I said I will understand one day how these things are built and how they function and how they work, and I will build one myself using off-the-shelf parts. I told myself I would do that one day. I just didn't realize that this could be the key to it. And so for the life of me, for a long time, I wondered, I was like, well, how, if they're using nickel powder and they're pushing hydrogen gas through it, how is it heating up without a flame? What are they doing? And then after doing the catalytic research, I realized it is a catalytic reaction that's causing this so-called excess heat to be generated. Now, we're going to go somewhere right now. Before we go there, let's talk about this catalytic reaction. Again, I was going to use this to basically extract the oxygen off the hydrogen side of my split cell, so it was pure, so I could store it. But this can be pretty significant. I think this is really important on the catalytic combustion side of things. Now, you can use this off the shelf just like it is. And again, me and Neal and I have been doing some experiments with it, and I dubbed it the HCAP the other night. And anybody that does cold fusion or LENR research knows all about the Andrea Rossi ECAP device. And it just reminded me of that. It also reminds me of the beryllium boiler, and we're going to go over that in just a minute. But I dubbed it the HCAP. And again, it has the precious metals embedded in it, and it can be used for this process off the shelf. Actually, I think for this particular research that we're doing, these catalytic converters are probably the best item to be using, because they're built to withstand high temperatures, probably up to close to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. If you can get it to 800 to 1000 degrees stable with HHO injection into this thing under a catalytic combustion process, then we can compete with the big boys that are in the cold fusion research, that are spending millions of dollars, that won't tell anybody how all their stuff works, won't talk to each other in the industry. Us garage engineers can just use parts off the shelf, and I think it's kind of ironic and funny, hilarious, that we have discovered this. We've stumbled across this and using an automobile catalytic converter to basically do this. And I told Neal tonight, I said, wouldn't it be something if we were able to somehow stabilize, maintain a thermonuclear reaction, cold fusion or LENR reaction in these using these automobile catalytic converters. That would be something. But this is not the only material you can use for this. You go to this is a catalytic heater, and I'm sure when you see these now, I mean, you've seen these before. These are in use right now for natural gas or propane. But apparently you can modify some of the plumbing and some of the parts, and you can put hydrogen or HHO gas into this, and it will work in the same way. And actually some of these require external pre-burners like glow plugs or something like that, but when you're using hydrogen and oxygen, you don't need it. And so I encourage you, if you've got one of these, even the little tiny Coleman's, to take your little HHO generator and start doing some experiments with it. Again, we noticed that you didn't need very much of the gas. A liter per minute would probably overkill for one of these small ones. Maybe a eighth of a liter, quarter of a liter, maybe if that much. I could bring these things up to temperature. These larger ones, you might need a liter per minute or so, or maybe even more, to do some tests on it. Bring it up to temperature. I don't know. But something called a catalytic combustor could also be used. And this is basically a cylinder or a rectangular device that is used in wood stoves. It's doing the same thing that a catalytic converter on a vehicle does. It's basically taking that unused and that nasty exhaust and trying to clean it up a little bit through the catalytic combustion process. But this is also something that can be found off the shelf that you can purchase, and you can slide these in tubes or what have you, and experiment with the gas with that. Now, a problem we were running into with these is flashback when you were injecting straight HHO or pure HHO into it. I think that can be solved by using flashback suppression layers over the substrate, layered on it, such as porous ceramic foam or ceramic beads or something of that nature that create a flashback layer. And I would think that would have to be somewhere between 10-30 microns maybe, because it will flash back over this honeycomb structure. And if you could use some sort of insulating ceramic before it hits the substrate inside of here, could prevent it from flashing back, especially if it was insulating and it doesn't, the temperature of ignition would not reach back here to where you're inputting the gas, and so the reaction would stay inside of here and has no ability to actually flash back. And so you have to insulate and keep that temperature down on the input, keep it from propagating and being able to ignite the HHO gas. So we were having that problem. But before it flashed back, we saw especially him, as he was there, he was seeing this thing rise in temperature, off just like a liter or two a minute of gas, 400 or 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was just still rising. It just got way hot, flashed back. So there is a few things we have to solve with that. We are trying to talk about ways of diluting the gas with ambient air, or using an air pump and air stone inside the bubbler itself to basically dilute it enough to prevent flashback. Personally, I think we need to be trying, we need to work on that as well, but we also need to look at pure HHO being injected into this. And yeah, we need to do a lot of work on this. Him and I talked about not telling anybody about this, but then I realized that this is really nothing new. This catalytic reaction is pretty well known. What is new about it is applying it with HHO. Again, there's not much information, if any at all, on this particular reaction. And I think we got another video here we're going to have to go through. And I'm sorry this is so long, but I got a lot to say. And you want to continue if you're intrigued by what you're hearing so far. Hopefully the last video that I'm going to be coming up on will finish up my point I'm trying to make. And we'll sort of connect some dots for you. But anyway, just a second here. Now, as I was looking at this catalytic combustion process, a light bulb went on, And I said, well, this sort of seems to be almost identical to what the cold fusion boys and the LENR reactions, or the anonymous heat effect, are doing as well. I had often wondered, how they were getting heat out of a nickel powder by just passing hydrogen through it, and now I understand it seems to be, at least in my mind, somewhat of a catalytic process that's taking place. And again, if you go to Wiseman's site, he's about the only one talking about it, saying that you can get excess heat out of using catalytic materials and Brown's gas, or HHO. Now, I can tell you that there are reports for hydrogen and catalytic combustion, and there doesn't seem to be, or at least from what I read, excess of energy as it pertains. It could be more efficient heating than current space heaters that use the same wattage of power if you were to do it on demand. I don't know, because there's no information on it. Nobody's really done it. And so hydrogen alone may work just as well. And I'm not saying at this point in time that HHO pass in a catalytic combustion process could be considered over unity, or even could be considered by the same process that's being used in some of these LENR or cold fusion reactors. What I am saying is that it just resembles it a lot. And so let's go to PESN.com, Sterling Allen's website. This is a wealth of information here on certain things. A recent article was saying that Brillion, I guess that's how you pronounce it, they actually signed a license with South Korean manufacturing company for their hot tube boiler technology, which is essentially LENR cold fusion. This is another nickel hydrogen reactor, I suppose, and essentially they've got this to the point where they've signed off with another Asian company. And Asia is actually kicking America's tail when it comes to development of this type of technology, whether it be HHO, hydrogen, or these mini nuclear reactors. Actually kicking America's tail on it. I think it's sad. But at the same time, these boilers are actually, or these the ECAD, or this hot tube boiler, or any of these cold fusion devices seem to be very simple in how they're constructed. But it still remains a mystery to most of us to how they actually work. And now that I understand about the catalytic combustion process, I understand that seems to be what's going on inside of these reactors when the gas is passed through it. Now, our electrolytic cells, Pons and Fleshman did some experiments, and their electrolytic cells, they're able to, they have been experimenting, they're seeing an excess of heat coming out in the form of steam. But these hot tubes, or the ECAT, so to speak, is able to get up to higher temperatures, and that's for several different reasons. But it just occurred to me that what my buddy Neal and I stumbled across and been experimenting with for the past week here could very well be the same thing that they're doing here, only in this one they are injecting H2 out of a pressurized tank of somehow. And they're stimulating that, and they have preheaters that have to get the nickel up to a certain activation temperature before the reaction happens, and so on and so forth. And in reality, most likely, you can just use HHO on demand out of your electrolyzer, because it already has this energetic, it's already in this energetic state that this hydrogen has to be in to start this process. And actually, and they're using nickel in this, which is actually, I wouldn't think is the absolute best material to use in these reactors. I would think that palladium or platinum would be better, but a lot more expensive. But again, we have stuff on the shelf, these catalytic heaters, and this catalytic combustor that goes on a wood stove, and this catalytic converter on a vehicle, which I think is actually, after looking at this stuff, I think this is the best way to go about testing this stuff for heater or boiler applications. Number one, if you could get this thing up hot enough and it's shooting out enough hot gases, hot exhaust on it, you could use it as a indoor space heater. Or you could somehow close this up and stick it in a vessel of water and create a boiler out of it. You're able to get 800 to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit stable temperatures. But again, I told Neal, wouldn't it be something if we could stabilize and create a nuclear reaction inside of these things, and use the automobiles company, the automobile cartel, use their technology against them in this. Wouldn't that be something? Now again, I'm not saying that that this is what it is, but I am saying that it just seems to resemble these LENR cold fusion devices almost to a T in how they function, why they function. At this point in time, I don't understand, or right now even care on the science and physics behind why the reaction works. I just know that in the field of LENR and cold fusion, they are getting results. And Gary Hendershot off the Smart Scarecrow made I had a question not too long ago on one of his shows on why there hasn't been more development and more mainstream information on this. And one of the things I have to say is the same reason and the same thing that I'm seeing going on in the HHO community online, is that these people are not talking to each other and they're not sharing with each other. And when you do that, you sort of limit the development and the pace at which it gets developed. One example would be, say, these guys come up against a problem that they can't solve, and let's say Andrea Rossi, hypothetically speaking, comes up against a problem that he cannot solve, but let's say Brillian solved the problem, and Andrea Rossi solved the problem that Brillian was having, and vice versa, and they don't talk to each other, so basically nothing gets, they're all scratching their heads and have to figure it out on their own. I kick myself in the tail, in the ass. I kick myself all the time because I didn't pick up on this when I first got into the research, and I'm pissed off that nobody has talked about this, nobody has experimented with this. I'm really angry, and I'm really angry that I'm seeing somewhat of a suppression going on, even on YouTube, with some of these people in these groups that are parroting some of the technologies, like Stanley Meyer. Some of it I think is just blatantly been put out there as propaganda to keep us away from experimenting with things like this. I didn't see any information on catalytic combustion of HHO. Don't see a whole lot of information on it, but we have the parts on the shelf again to experiment with it. I think it's well deserving, and what I'm really in for this for and is to solve problems like this. World hunger. See all these very sad pictures that doesn't have to be this way. All these kids, and there's propaganda from America. I mean, you pull this up on Google Images and you get all these pictures from third world countries like this, and it's sad that it's going on in other countries as well, but the same damn thing's going on in our own country, and it's because we don't have access to some of these energy technologies, which are cheap and abundant. And we also need to get this stuff developed for this problem, global pollution. And you see these nuclear power plants and these coal-fired plants that are polluting the earth, the vehicles, the automobiles that are burning gasoline and diesel are polluting the earth, and we're like, what do you do? But we got the technology, the tools, we have everything we need right now to make this happen, and we don't have to see stuff like this. People, you can't pray to God that this will be solved. We have to solve it. Humans have to solve these problems. God is not going to solve these problems for us. Whatever your God may be, for me, God is everything, and we are gods. We were supposedly made in God's image, And so we are the same guys that we are trying to desperately pray to for help and guidance. We are the ones that guide. We are God, and so we are the ones to fix this problem, these problems. Very simple problems. We could all solve in a matter of, I would think, in a decade we could solve it. But you got to get off your ass, got to start sharing information, and you got to quit thinking about the dollar. And, you know, when it comes to this cold fusion and LENR research, it's a friggin' mystery to most of us, because these companies that are developing this stuff, they have investors tied up into it. They don't want them to talk about it. They're thinking they're going to become rich off of this stuff, and they don't want to talk about it very openly. And so it's a mystery, and for the most part it seems to be very simple technology that we could all be playing with. And in fact, with our electrolytic cells, we are playing with the cold fusion. But to get some of the results that these boys are playing with, I honestly think at this point in time, more testing needs to be done. But we need to look at this. You need people to pull these catalytic converters off of vehicles, mine brand new, and start pumping HHO through it, and start figuring out ways to keep it from flashing back. Start documenting the temperatures of what you're getting out of this thing, because this could quite honestly become this exact same device, only we're doing it on a beer budget and with something that's already on the shelf. So, in short, guys, I just want to say that I honestly think that there's something to this. This could be made into really something great. I'd like to see an on-demand HHO catalytic heater developed that goes up against the on-demand a resistive electrical space heater of the same wattage. Whether we get excess heat out of this or not remains to be seen. At this point, I really don't care. But again, it looks like that there's been a sweep across the internet for using HHO in this catalytic combustion process. So that leads me to believe that maybe what Mr. Wiseman was saying here is in fact true. Again, I don't know why this guy, since he said that he thought it was true and he didn't play around with it himself, because it seems to be an easy thing to run experiments on. I don't know if he was scared of the big bad wolf when it comes to the men in black or whatever, or I don't care. All thing I know is I'm cold. I've been trying to develop this hydrogen heater for a long time. I've seen a lot of people that have also had questions about heating with hydrogen and with HHO. Nothing has really been done. Everybody is so tied up in some of their other projects or so up in the clouds with Stanley Meyer stuff that they seem to forget about the stuff that we can do right now with it. But this video is about to end, and I just want to say, Mr. Ward, I appreciate all the talks we have. I appreciate the experiments that you've done just thus far. I know you're okay with me doing this video. This could be something that we could keep to ourselves and run more tests and try to develop and make money on, but I think this is bigger than both of us. I think the community and the HHO community deserves to know about this and deserves to look in this direction, because we're being pointed in sometimes the wrong direction when it comes to this stuff. And everybody out there that's involved in the research at the present moment, I really want you to take a step back and think about your priorities and what are you really trying to do with your research? Where are you really trying to go with it? Are you really trying to benefit humanity? Where are you at with it? Because where I'm at with it is I'm understanding that a lot of foul stuff is going on, and I'm sick and tired of it. But guys, the parts are on the shelf. Technology's here. Let's make this happen. Fix these problems like this: world hunger and global pollution. Don't have to be this way, guys. Don't have to be this way. Sharing will get us here a lot faster than not sharing and not talking about it. Thank you.